Have you ever found yourself eating when you weren't even hungry? Or told yourself, this is the last time? Only to find yourself in the pantry or back at the table again in a few hours. Our guest today, Amber, wants you to know that binge eating isn't your fault. It's a habit, and habits can be rewired. But before we dive into this episode, you know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all.
Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Giovanni, and I'm here with Amber.
Hi, Giovanni. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome to the Good Vibes Studio, Amber. So let's kind of rewind to the absolute beginning. What was the moment that you realized you weren't dieting anymore and you were in a loop that had you over and over and over your life, taking over your life?
Yeah. So my journey started way back in 2015 when I had begun calorie counting. I wanted to lose weight. And most of us who go to the internet to find a solution for that, the first thing we come across is calories in versus calories out. So we just need to eat less and move more. So that's what I started doing. I thought it was so simple. I put all my information into my fitness pal. It spit out a number. And I thought, great, I have it all figured out. And I did start to lose weight. I lost about 10 pounds and I was feeling good. But then right after a few months of doing that, I slowly started binge eating. And the first time it happened, I remember it so clearly. It was around Christmas time. I snuck downstairs and I was like, okay, I've been so good. I'm going to have one cookie. And then I had one cookie and then another and then another and another until I'd had 7 cookies. And I was like so ashamed. I was so terrified that I had just ruined my days of calories. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be good tomorrow. This won't ever happen again. But that was not the last time it happened. It started happening weekly and then daily to the point where I was binge eating thousands of calories every day. And once that happened, I was so desperate to get rid of it because I just did not want to gain any weight. I was so terrified of it. So I also struggled with bulimia for a time period where I'd be purging my food. After a couple months of this going on, I realized I needed help, that I wasn't getting any better. It was continuing to impact my life. I was continuing to gain weight, and I was just really scared of the long-term repercussions. So I went to the first place where most people go to if they are disordered eating and they want more of this mindset approach, which is to a therapist. And I worked with a couple of different therapists over a period of the next year. While it helped me a lot with the bulimia side of things, it never really got to the core of my eating issues. And this is something I see in a lot of my clients who come to me is they've been in therapy and maybe they've mentioned it to their therapist of, oh, I'm struggling with overeating or all or nothing thinking around food. I think about food all day long, but their therapist just doesn't really do anything helpful about it. For a small percentage of the population, there is trauma involved that leads to binge eating, but I find it's a much smaller proportion of people than we actually imagine. For most people, it's the dieting part that starts their overeating. So you recognize, like if you find yourself overeating, it usually started when there was some form of restriction involved. So therapy wasn't working, so I decided to go out on my own and try to research solutions of what to do instead. And during my time, I tried a lot of different things. I tried intermittent fasting. I tried cutting out sugar because I thought if sugar was the problem, I was binge eating on sugar. I might as well just cut it out. That didn't work. I tried everything that Google had suggested, eating more protein, drinking more water, calling a friend, taking a bubble bath, going for a walk, distracting myself, finding 20 new hobbies. And none of those things worked. And it wasn't until I came across this blog post that described their approach of thinking about binge eating as just a habit. And this really put off a light bulb moment that changed everything for me because it allowed me to make it so it wasn't this big giant problem and disorder that was wrong with me and just a habit that I had gotten into. So what I came to the conclusion of and learned through that was for majority of people, and this is what I teach people, your binge eating often starts from dieting. Like I said, you do some sort of restrictive diet, you cut back on something, you do keto, low carb, cutting out the calories. And to our survival brain, this lower part of our brain, that means we're going into a famine. Our lower survival brain does not know the difference between a juice cleanse and the world disappearing from food if we are not getting enough calories. I know you do some juicing. So maybe you can butt it in a minute with how you address that. But if we're not getting enough calories on a consistent basis, our brain is going to act up and say, hey, I want to make sure you're getting enough food to try to help us. And then we overeat. And what happened to me is everyone in my life that I was going to try to help with this would just tell me, just eat more food, just eat more food. You're not eating enough. And at a point I was like, no, I'm not dieting anymore. I am eating enough. And what had happened then is my brain had formed the habit around that the behavior of binge eating because I had done it for so many years while I was dieting, that even though I stopped dieting, I still kept doing it because our brain is very sensitive to restriction. And so it has a hard time letting go of some of these habits that we have to tell ourselves no around food too, because it gets nervous that we're going into restriction again.
I love that. Thank you for like walking us down through your journey, been into deeper within like the psychology and the brain aspects of it. So thank you for your openness and your boldness to share. I love that you talked about the brain is sensitive to restriction, and it made me think back when, especially when we're talking about juicing, that I did like a liquid detox, and my body had never experienced that before, and I was really like, okay, getting in the juices, getting in the smoothies, and I have all of these science-backed research insights on the benefits of what I'm providing to my body in regards to all of that. And as soon as my body started speaking to me like, okay, this is about over for you. You need some vegetables. You needed some, like some whole food. And I started eating it. And then my body was kind of like tense, like my stomach was tense. And I was like, well, what could this be? Did some more research. And it was like, because you were doing a liquid detox, your body is now sensitive and almost like, oh my goodness, how do I forgive myself? Now I'm eating food again when I had just been, like doing just the juices and the smoothies. And I was like, oh, look at how I was so focused on these aspects of the benefits. I wasn't paying attention to what my brain was receiving in regards to my actions or my behavior. So I love that you made that connection, because it made a connection for me just in regards to how I was doing things to better understand how the body works. I'm glad that you saw that blog post and you were able to see that binge eating was more so a habit, not just a condition or a disorder that comes, like most people think, from trauma versus coming from a form of restriction. I'm telling myself I don't need to eat this anymore or not have so much of this. And so I'm in this restrictive almost kind of loop or cycle, thinking this is the right way to fuel my body, show up for my body. And so I love that gave you that light bulb, because it brought you to what the work you're doing today and helping so many other people address the habit. But let's look at the things that you tried. You talked about intermittent fasting. So many people do intermittent fasting. Sometimes it's a part of a lifestyle they want to have. Sometimes it's with regards to like weight management. The sugar, we already know what sugar does to our body as a whole anyway. And so then trying to reduce the sugar. Then you talked about drinking more water. Let us know in the comments. Have you been told just drink more water and you'll get full and then you'll stop, eating, if that's something you've heard or you attempted to try? And then eating more protein. So you had all these things that you tried and that you tried to explore on your own. But I really like the fact that you knew, and I don't know how you got to this point, that you knew it was in the restriction phase, that this was really your problem. How did you know that there was no trauma involved and that it was just you going into the restrictive way of getting in your calories?
Yeah. So a big approach too was kind of like, we need to solve all of your emotional issues. And I do teach some things around emotional eating, but I think that's another like overblown thing where it could be part of it, but it's not often the whole story. And for me, it was just, I tried to that way. I tried looking for the trauma. I tried like doing the healing the emotions and finding new hobbies and all these other things that I was supposed to do in therapy, and it just didn't work. So I'm like, if it was some sort of trauma or something, then it would have worked by then, but it hadn't. So that's where I kind of knew something else was at play. And the big difference between everything I was doing with those actions of the intermittent fasting, cutting out sugar and stuff, and what actually worked was I was missing the mindset piece. I'll give a really clear example that will make obvious of the difference between this. Imagine you sit down to eat a cookie, and if the whole time you're sitting down telling yourself, I'm never going to get this cookie again. It's so bad for me, but I love it. I am being bad today, but I'm going to be good tomorrow, so I'm going to get it in all right now. You are going to want that cookie so much more. People often tend to put those foods on a pedestal. So it's like, it's so special. It's so delicious. It's just so yummy. That all makes you want more. So those are like desire creating thoughts. Now let's imagine you sit down with a cookie and you're like, oh, I can have a cookie anytime I wanted to. I don't really need to have it right now. It's honestly not even that good. Like, it's an Oreo. It's stale and dry, and it's honestly not going to even be that tasty. You're not going to eat the cookie in the same way that you would if those thoughts are different. So a lot of people focus on the strategies like, oh, I just need to cut out sugar. But again, if you're having those thoughts the whole time, it's going to feel really, really difficult. So that's the approach that I take, is really looking at, well, what are our thoughts around food? And if anyone's struggling with food noise, which is this term that's come about in the last couple of years, which is really just we're thinking about food all day, a lot of times it's because we have so many different unanswered thoughts and untrue thoughts and rules and restrictions and just so many things going through our brain each and every day that we're not taking the time to question or evaluate. So then it makes so much anxiety come up, so much fear around food come up, so much stress, and it just makes eating really difficult. But most of those approaches never mention anything about the mindset piece.
And I like that you even brought in mindset, because mindset is a huge thing, because it's about your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs around whatever concept, yourself. And so I like that, because it in turn shapes your behaviors. And then it creates your lifestyle, and then that's how you're living. And so I'm grateful that you broke it down like that, even with telling yourself, this is the last cookie I'm going to have for a while. Like, in case you're about to do like the 75 hard or some type of, 30, 60, 90 day thing or a 21 day thing. There's so many different fad diets or trends or time frames that people put on doing something differently. But I like that you said how you talk about your approach with the food, with the behavior, with the experience, because for me, I get so excited because I'm a foodie. I get so excited about different plant-based meals that I get to have. Not the ones that I'm making, like the ones other people make or create, like the culinary genius of it all. And I get excited about it because I know how good the food is for me, because I understand a lot of nutrients come from whole plant-based foods. And so I'm like, if I'm fueling myself with good food and I'm having a good food experience, I don't feel like I'm restricting myself from not having the dairy that my body doesn't respond well to, not having the excessive meat that my body doesn't respond well to. Knowing my body now, I have this new thoughts, new feelings, new beliefs around food and what food is doing for myself, that I don't feel restricted in any way. Like when people say, well, you don't eat this, you don't eat that. And I realized, Amber, that when I started my intentional healing journey with endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, and fibroids, I had to remove from thinking about what I couldn't have to all the things that I could have. And that was the mindset shift for me to truly embrace this thing without thinking about all the things that I wasn't eating anymore that was in form of a habit or familiarity or convenience. And so I'm really grateful that you brought that down and that you're helping other people shape a new mindset approach to how they're eating, and knowing that it's not just emotional. And you blew that myth up right there about it always being some type of emotional eating. So I kind of want to ask you, you kind of talked about this before, and you said that binge urges aren't who we are. They're like ghosts. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it's more of like that I felt like I was a ghost out of my body, where when I would get these urges. So how you define an urge? It's like this strong, overwhelming desire to eat that feels urgent, right? So, and that's how I would describe it, as like, I'm a ghost out of my body going into the kitchen and I'm just not even present for the experience. So our urges are coming from this part of our brain that is automatic and habitual. And that's really good news, because this lower part of our brain that's trying to make our life easier, like, let's just clarify too, this part of our brain isn't bad. It's automating all of our habits, because it would be absolutely exhausting and we get nothing done all day if we had to think about how to lift up our leg and move and walk. That's what that part of our brain automates for us. So it's a really helpful part, but sometimes things start to get automated that we don't want to get automated. And so when our eating habits start to become automated, we'll get triggered. So something will happen in the world where, maybe we're at a big party or we're around a food that we're scared of, and then we get triggered. And then we get urges to do the action that we don't want to do. When we do the action, when we eat, then it reinforces it with a reward, and then the habit loop continues. What most people try to do is eliminate the trigger. So they decide, oh, if parties are triggering for me, I just shouldn't go to parties. If I get stressed and I eat, I just shouldn't be stressed anymore. But that's actually the wrong approach. We don't need to change the triggers. We need to change our response to the triggers. Because if you avoid the triggers, your life is going to get very small, very boring. And that's not the life you want to live. But also, if we're avoiding the triggers, we're not actually able to change our brain at all, because we're just like avoiding a situation versus confronting it. It's kind of like if you avoid an argument with a person versus having the confrontation, nothing's actually going to change there, just simmering under the surface. So that's the same thing in our brain. In order for our brain pathway to change, we have to have it activated. So this means we have to be triggered. Being triggered is a good thing, because that means we have an opportunity to change your brain in that moment. So it is good to go to the party that scares you because there's a lot of food, because that gives you an opportunity to act different. Sure, sometimes you might slip up and it might not go how you want to, but if you have a new plan in place, if you have guidance and support, if you're able to make a different choice, then you literally can rewire that neural network into having a different brain. So this is what I say when I mean I've literally rewired my brain to be a normal natural eater, is that I've changed my responses to these urges. So when you stop acting on the urges, your brain no longer gets that reward of the food, and it deconditions that brain pathway. So then the next time you're in that situation, there's not that same strong desire to eat that food, to binge, because you've deconditioned it from the last time you did it.
I absolutely appreciate you breaking that down, and understanding that an urge is a strong desire about what you want to eat, to the point where you're not even being present. And it kind of goes into our mindful eating concept that both of us kind of really love, in regards to actually being present with your food, and understanding what you're actually doing in the act of eating. But to hear about the triggers being a good thing, not too many times we hear people make triggers being a positive thing, but being able to hear that triggers are just opportunities to change your response to something when you have a plan in place. And it takes time to create that plan, and sometimes you need support when creating that plan, so you understand what's actually happening. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in survival cycles and things that we don't even realize are our habit loops, and the things that we actually respond to. We don't even know we're responding to something. We're just doing it because we've gotten so mundane and automatic with this thing called life. And so I absolutely love that actual approach. But before we get into it, I want to take a brief pause real quick to talk to y'all about the HEAL method. So if you've been pushing through pain, feeling drained, bloated, moody, or just not like yourself, it's time to stop managing symptoms and start healing from the root. So I created a free training, the HEAL method, HEAL, where I'll show you how to break up with inflammation and reclaim your energy naturally through mindset, mindful eating, and movement. So no more guessing, no more quick fixes. Let's create the plan for you to get to your root cause. So Amber, as we get back into this conversation, which I'm absolutely loving, and if y'all are tuned in on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and connect with Amber in the show notes. And then if you listen on your favorite podcast distribution platform, make sure you get a show or rating and a follow if you've learned any good vibes and value thus far. So you talked about the brain and how to respond to triggers and creating a different plan so we can stop that loop. What's your whole method about actually getting into the therapy for food and how to have a safety plan or creative experience?
Mm-hmm. So let's think about how we create safety in our brain. The first thing we need to look at is going into our unconscious brain, because 95% of our processing each and every day happens in our unconscious. What that means is we will logically say something like, I know what to do, but I'm just not doing it. That's because you can have the logical information. You hear a good tip on an amazing podcast like this one, and you think, wow, that's so great. But if you have some unconscious belief deep down that is blocking against that, you're not going to change. It's not going to work. Right? So there's going to be something that comes up that stops you from doing what you want to do. So what this might look like is, let's say a part of you feels unsafe letting go of food because you have this deep down belief that one day I'm just going to really have to go back on that diet. I'm going to have to do it in order to lose weight. I need to lose 50 pounds. And so there's like this looming thought of, okay, I got to diet one day again. And then if you're trying to tell yourself logically, like, oh, Amber gave me this great thought around, oh, I can have this food again later. But deep down, your brain's like, nope, but we're going to go on a diet again later. These two things are going to clash and you might not even recognize it. So one way I get around that is through hypnosis. So I use aspects of hypnosis in my coaching. Now, hypnosis is not what most people think it is. All hypnosis is relaxing your conscious mind to get to the deeper layers of your unconscious. This doesn't need to be anything long or conscious. This can happen just like during a meditation. You know, you might have a really good insight during a meditation. Maybe you're talking to a coach and you're like, you know, closing your eyes a little, feeling into your body, and then you recognize something you haven't recognized before. You have a big light bulb moment. That is really important for having these big insights of changing our brain. So one thing I'm going to recommend, I'm going to give you a free guided audio for the show notes, and I walk you through a visualization in my audio. It's an audio to help you stop a binge. So I created this audio because I desperately wished I had someone to just kind of like gently and lovingly yell at me and be like, Amber, you don't want to eat all this food right now. It's okay. You can sit with this urge. It's not going to hurt you. So the first thing I go through is basically some reminder of what urges are. Sometimes urges can feel very scary because we don't really understand what's happening. All we know is we feel, again, like out of control, out of our body, and we're just eating the food. And so we have a lot of fear around them. But when we have fear around them, again, our unconscious brain is really scared then. So then we're trying to say no to ourselves, and we're not able to do that because that fear is blocking us. So I give some reminders such as the urges are coming from your lower brain, which means they are powerless. They can't make you do anything. They're harmless. They're not going to hurt you, and they're meaningless, meaning they're not going to be some big significant thing that you're going to uncover about your life, typically through a habitual urge that's coming up. One of my favorite things to do to show your brain that you have the power and that you're not going to eat is literally putting your hands under your legs. And this is not necessarily so you don't eat, but it can have that effect. If you're like at a dinner table or something and you're out at a restaurant, you're sitting on your hands. No matter how hard you think right now, touch my nose, touch my nose, touch my nose. You're not going to do it. You can think and sit here all day long, but until your conscious mind give you the okay to lift up your legs and touch your nose, you're not going to do it. And so that's a good reminder for you of like physicality rise, that no matter what your brain is thinking in that moment, no matter how hard these urges or cravings feel, you're not going to do anything unless you consciously make that decision of I'm going to eat. It is always a choice. So those are a couple reminders I give, but then I also take you through visualization. Visualization is such a powerful, underrated tool that is used by CEOs, athletes, executives. People pay thousands of dollars for a visualization session. And in this audio, I walk you through to like imagine both paths. This is what I call telling yourself the whole story. So normally we tell ourselves chapter 1, we eat the food, it tastes good, the end. That is not what happens. It's chapter 1, I eat the food, it maybe tastes good. But then there's chapters 2 through 10 where now we're feeling overly full, we're feeling bloated, our digestion is off for the rest of the day, we're having a hard time concentrating at work, we don't sleep well that night. Maybe if you have a health condition, you feel some sort of other effect there. That's what we need to show our brain of what happened. So I literally have you imagine you're hitting a fork in the road and you're taking 2 paths. One, let's imagine you eat it and then all of this horrible stuff happens. But now let's imagine we sit with this urge. It's uncomfortable for maybe 30 seconds or so, but then you get through it, you're feeling better, and all of a sudden you're starting to feel really, really proud of yourself because you've done it. You are now literally rewiring your brain in that moment, so you're becoming more of this normal, natural eater. You're able to focus at work that day, sleep that night, and that gives your brain that very positive image of this is exactly who I want to be, which is essentially like creating a blueprint for how you want to go about the rest of the day and the actions you want to take.
I love it. So I was just over here like breaking it down. So I hope y'all enjoy the audio that we're going to link into the show notes of this episode. But being able to really remind you what an urge really is, to know, is that what I'm really experiencing? Because awareness is key to knowing your body and knowing yourself and making connections of what's actually happening. And then I got 2 that you really want to make sure that you remember you're in power of making a conscious decision. Like, you still make a decision, even if you feel like you're not making a decision is still being made. And so I like that. And then the power of visualization and being able to really see yourself as a normal, natural eater and figuring out since I visualize it, I can now make this happen. I see that it's possible on my daily flow. And so I really appreciate you kind of walking us through that sense of how to really stop the binge and understanding what the urge is all about. So what kind of thoughts and fears keep people in the binge cycle, even when they want to stop, Amber?
Mm-hmm. So I think a big thing is this thought of I'm not going to get this again, or it's going to be taken away from me. I'm giving something up. That's a big thing. And I'm sure that probably comes up maybe with your people when they're changing their eating habits and their lifestyles. Is sometimes it can feel like we're giving up something that I love. And with binge eating in general, sometimes people feel like it's an escape. It's a way to like relax after the end of a long day. And so if we have this like underlying thought of I'm giving up something I love, or I'm never going to get this again, that's going to stop us from making progress. And to that, what I like to say is we're never giving up something that's serving you. If you feel like you are giving up something that's serving you, it's like, let your coach know that and say like, I'm not doing this, because we only want to give up the things that aren't serving you. So if there is something that is causing you more pain than it is pleasure in your life, that is not serving you. So if there is something that is contributing negatively to your health condition over and over and over again, but you get 10 seconds of pleasure for that, not helping you. But we need to show our brain the downside of it. We have to show our brain how it's unpleasurable, and also start to tell ourselves again that truth of that story, that this isn't pleasurable. This isn't fun. This is actually a really painful habit to have. This is actually like destruction to myself and my body. This is self-harm. And that when we tell ourselves the truth of this, like I am harming myself right now, our brain is like, oh, wait a second. And this is a huge problem I have with like other methods with binge eating. Is like, they'll be like, well, you're doing this because you're coping and it's helping you. And yes, there might be some sort of positive intention that we want to address under the surface, but it's not a useful story to tell ourselves, because if we tell ourselves something is fun and helping us and serving us, then we're going to want to keep it. So if we're giving something up, really seeing like how we're not really giving anything up and we're just gaining something back in our lives. And a thought I had earlier when you were talking, when, you're having to say no to yourself around something, or you're having to decide like, I don't want this food in my life. You're doing plant-based eating. You're deciding I'm not going to have meat in my life. I'm not going to have dairy in my life. I am personally dairy-free too, as we discussed a little bit, Giovanni, about our food histories with plant-based living and stuff. But one thing I'm not telling myself is that I can't have this. I'm telling myself I am choosing not to eat this for the reasons that I like. I can have dairy, even if you have like an allergy, even if someone's celiac, you can eat gluten. You can, but you're probably not going to like the results. So it's still a choice you make. You're choosing not to have it because of the impacts it has on your body. And once you see that strong connection of it's something I'm choosing, it's never something I have to do, I think it becomes a lot more powerful. And also, again, not thinking about it as like I'm taking something out, but what am I bringing into my life? When I'm saying no to this, what am I saying yes to? No to the dairy, but yes to clear skin, yes to energy, yes to not having my nasally feeling that I get when I have dairy, or this I get like a weird sensation in my throat that like tingles. So that's what I'm saying no to. And I'm saying yes to all the other things that come without that.
I like that you kind of went on that route, because I'm all for that too. And another thing that helped me in regards to saying yes to more plant-based foods and having them on my plates and having great experiences with it is I was realizing the functional nutritional benefits that came from eating those foods. What nutrients am I getting from these things? How is it helping my body? Why do I even need these things? And so if that's you and you don't know why you're eating or what you're getting from your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, or you want to get more of your nutrients in, and knowing that you can get it from food, in the show notes, there's a plant-based alternative guide just to give you more insight as well as recipes for inspiration. But only give up what's not serving you. That's a bar right there, Amber. If y'all are feeling that drop, give it up, because it's not serving you in the comments. Like, that's huge, because people always think that they're letting something go, or we use that R word again. They're restricting themselves for a specific benefit or purpose that might only be short-term gain and not necessarily as a lifestyle. But when you do want the clear skin every day, you do want to have less painful periods, regulated periods, hormone balancing. You want to not feel the cramps. You don't want to bleed for 14 to 21 days like one of my clients, and you rather bleed for 4 to 5 days in a menstrual cycle in the month. There's things that you are doing that best serve you, not giving it up just to give it up for a short period of time. And so I'm really glad that you brought that concept in, Amber, because it is a shift in the minds of the thoughts and the feelings and possibly the beliefs that some people are actually having right now that could help them build different habits. And so let's talk about it. You talked about helping people feel normal around chocolate or pizza again. How does that transformation truly happen? They might be saying right now, I have this thing for this set of food or this particular option. Help me, Amber. What's that first step that I need to take?
Yeah. So a lot of that is getting into this abundance mindset of, again, I can have this food again later. It's not going anywhere. One of my favorite questions that I asked this question to a client once, and she literally stopped overeating like the next week. It was the most powerful question for her, but is knowing that I can have this food again later. Do I want it now? What that does is that allows you to get into this abundance mindset of saying, okay, if I can have this food in 10 minutes from now, an hour from now, 2 hours from now, maybe I don't actually want it right now. Maybe I'd be okay with it later. And that helps give us more choice. Because even if we say I can have this food again later, it's like, well, but I couldn't really have it in 10 minutes from now. Maybe we could. And so that really gets us into that abundance mindset. But I'm also a big advocate of mindful eating. So whenever we're eating these more processed, hyperpalatable foods, it is really important to be sitting down, undistracted, meaning like no screens, not in front of the TV, not scrolling TikTok when you do it, having it all out on a plate, being able to visualize it, because that's going to allow our brain to really fully taste and enjoy these foods. People will tell me all the time, I just love food so much, I don't want to give it up. And I'm like, well, if you love food so much, why are you eating it in 3 minutes in front of the TV and not tasting it at all? Like, truly, you do not love food that much? Because
you better check them, Amber.
The things we love, we want to spend time with. Like, if you love your best friend, you're not going to have them come over and turn on the TV and say, well, I don't want to like pay attention to you and you should leave soon. But like, that's essentially what we're doing with food. So if there's truly something you love and enjoy, take the time to sit down, put it all out, and truly taste and enjoy it. Because when you get the pleasure from it, then you can leave that portion that you took feeling satisfied instead of like, oh my gosh, I got to the bottom of the chip bag and I don't remember a single bite of it. And now I want to go back for more in the cabinets because I didn't get that pleasure that I was wanting out of it. So always like just being very present with our food, mindful. A good question to ask yourself is, if I were describing this to an alien right now, how would I describe it? Because that allows us to get very like curious of like, oh my gosh, like if an alien had never eaten a cookie before, like how would I tell them about it? And then it requires us to get very present with it instead of just like shoving it in 3 bites.
Come on, getting present with your food by explaining it to an alien. Never heard that one before. I like that. I like that approach. That's something. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never, if y'all thought that was interesting too, drop alien in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. But I really like that approach. But come on, Amber, with the abundance mindset, knowing that I can have this food later. Do I need it right now? Mm-hmm. Do I need it right now? That abundance mindset is definitely a shift when you're thinking about food and what you can have. And it goes right back to that conscious decision that you're truly still making, whether you believe you are or you don't. A decision is being made. So live in abundance. So Amber, you're in full freedom, full food freedom now, chocolate in moderation, 30 pounds down, no food noise. What changed most in your relationship with yourself through this work?
I love that question so much because I think this is something most people don't think about, and don't skip over this part because it's so important. We often think, okay, I just want to get healthier. I just want to lose the weight. I just want to feel normal around food. But when we change our relationship with ourselves, that changes everything else in our entire life. And the changes that I have made to the way I date, the way I run a business, the way I show up for my friendships is just night and day because of how I'm treating myself differently. we're so often taught as women to hate ourselves and beat ourselves into shame and to tell ourselves we're not enough and that we just need to try harder and hustle harder. But that is just not what ever works. Because again, let's use the best friend example. Your best friend comes over and you're like, you're a piece of shit. You're horrible. You're never good enough. You're too fat. Like, they are not going to, that's what we say to ourselves. They're not going to take action that's positive after that. They're going to feel really hurt and need to process that emotion. And that's what we're creating through ourselves all day long, is a whole bunch of negative emotion that now we have to process just because of the BS that we're telling ourselves in our head. So when we can learn to be kinder to ourselves, and a lot of this comes throughout the process because, you know, sometimes it is hard to feel love towards ourselves when every single day we're telling ourselves we're going to eat better and do better, and then we don't. It really degrades our self-trust. So once we start this journey, it is easier to trust ourselves more and to have more respect for ourselves because we're honoring our word. And that's what any good relationship is built on, is trust and respect and responsibility to each other. And so once we start to have that with ourselves, it does become easier. But as that builds and we're talking kinder to ourselves, we're having our own back. That is a skill that will help you in any other area of life. So then when you go to work the next day, you might notice yourself saying like, hey, you've got this. Like, it's okay if you made a mistake, just get right back up, try again. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. For me in dating, I had a lot of self-worth issues where I just would never feel good enough. I had so much anxious attachment, but through healing my relationship with food and my myself, I'm able to now have my own back and be there for me. And even when other people have different thoughts, I get to choose intentionally what I think about me. If you're wanting to start a different career or be in business, like there's a lot of other thoughts that come up with that of how hard it is. The journey is difficult and long. And if you can have talked yourself through kindly through that process of when you were struggling with food or your body or your health, those thoughts are already there in you to apply to your next stage of life.
Agree. I love that. So change your relationship with yourself. And I think a lot of times people say it might start with the health. Like for me, it started with being diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis on my left side, 2 small fibroids at the time of my surgery, and polycystic ovary syndrome. And for me, the journey might have been, there's no cure for these conditions, but nutrition can help. And so when starting to work on that, because of these health conditions, scares after surgery, understanding what's going on inside of my body, that journey wasn't just a journey towards healing. It was a journey towards loving myself. That's when I got into a place where I realized, okay, as a child, I was a people pleaser. You know, I didn't understand boundaries. I didn't value boundaries because I didn't even know what they were. And if I told other people no, I felt bad about it, realizing that if I told them yes, it would be, you know, a whole different situation. You know, I'll be telling myself no. And so when it comes into, like you said, you're trusting yourself, your self-worth, respecting yourself, showing up for yourself, honoring yourself, it's a game changer. I'm sorry, it's not a game changer. It's a life-changing experience to how you're really approaching this thing called life. So I love that you say, start with the relationship with yourself, honoring your word. And then also when you talked about it too, when you say, I'm going to do this and you don't do it, you start degrading the trust within yourself. Like there's a place to give yourself grace. There's not anything. It's all about progress over perfection. I say that all the time. But if you're going to be intentional with how you want to show up for yourself, be intentional about how you show up for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that takes loving yourself and seeing yourself as this is the version I want to be. How do I get to that one habit at a time, one thing at a time, one decision at a time, every single day, not just trying to overhaul my whole life? And so I'm really grateful that you brought that down, that what really helped you and changed most within yourself was creating a place to love you and care for you like you've never done before. And so I kind of really appreciate how you were able to kind of walk us through that. And so can you kind of share a story of a client who thought they'd never stop binging and what changed for them after your process?
Mm-hmm. Of course. So one of my favorite stories that comes to mind is one of my clients, Ginger, who she always would binge peanut butter. She had a couple of other foods that just anytime she'd have in the house, she would always have a third of the jar. Like without a doubt, could not have peanut butter in her house. And what we did together is I walked her through what is called my trigger food process, which is how to eat anything in moderation. So we walked her through that, but then I also took her through a visualization, which we literally visualized step by step the plan that she was going to do. Okay, she was going to take out the jar of peanut butter. She was going to scoop a little teaspoon out, set it on her plate with the rest of her meals, put away the peanut butter in the cabinet. She was going to eat it. Then she was going to put it in the dishwasher, close up the dishwasher, walk out of the kitchen, and go read a book. So it was a very specific plan. It wasn't just, oh, I'm going to go eat a little bit of peanut butter and move on. We gave her brain a very specific blueprint in this visualization. And the next week she came back to me and she told me for the first time in her life, she had eaten 1 teaspoon of peanut butter and moved on. She didn't go back for more. She didn't eat more any of the rest of the day. She just moved on. And so that's one of my favorite stories, just because so many people think that like these foods are just in charge of me and I'll just never be able to have them. And I like to remind you, like, they're just foods. They're an inanimate object that is living in your cabinets. They're not coming out. They're not calling to you. They're not haunting you in your sleep. They're just food. They're just objects. And we can learn how to change our relationship with them by changing our brain.
I love it. Come on, brain blueprint of a plan. I like it. That definitely helped. I know it gave her more trust in her ability to get her control back over what she was experiencing. So that was powerful in itself. So go ahead, Ginger. And shout out to you, Amber, for really understanding the psychology of eating and really being able to have various approaches and tools to be able to support your clients when it comes to becoming a confident eater. And so leave us with a journaling prompt to help someone begin listening to their body instead of battling it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think I'll give you 2. One is just like an awareness exercise of, I want you to write down when you feel triggered. And as we talked about earlier, expect to feel triggered. Like, you're going to want to eat the food. You're going to want to binge. You're going to want to do your old habit, but look at it as a beautiful opportunity. Expect that desire to come up and know you don't have to act on it. So the more awareness we can have around that, the more we can expect it and not have that fear around it going on. But then the second thing I would recommend is just doing kind of a thought download on looking at, what are my beliefs about food and my eating habits? Getting those out will help you to start to see some of maybe these rules, some of these limitations, some of these beliefs around, I have to cut it out. It's going to be boring. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Like any of those things, we want to get them out. And then you can ask yourself, is it true? So that will help you kind of break it down. So one, just getting awareness around, when do I struggle with food and why might that be? So we can expect it and then get excited to change our brain. And then also looking at the other times that are what are our thoughts around food in general, and how can we think about them as not true?
All right, I like it. And thank you for recapping and figuring out how to navigate that. So I wrote it down for my notes too. I hope y'all caught it as well. So we're going to do some quick fire food freedom questions. So what's the biggest food myth we need to let go of?
I think that foods can be addictive. They can. It's not 100% myth, but the food itself is often not the problem. It's our thoughts around the food. So if we have different thoughts around the food, we can interact with it differently. And we know this because if all foods were 100% addictive, then no one in the world would ever be able to eat them in moderation. We would all be like going behind the grocery stores, like giving out 50s for a bag of Lay's and, sneak eating them in the back. We're not doing that, right? So there are people who will like leave behind 3 chips in the bag, and we're like, how do they do that? It's because they're thinking about foods differently.
Amber, don't give the FDA any ideas to have people around the back of these grocery stores feeding for this food that is not addictive. That was like the best visual I've ever heard. So that was a good one. Thank you. Thank you, Amber, for that. All right, here goes the next one. Most surprising thing that helped you stop binge eating.
I'm going to take it back to the mindset of changing my thoughts, where, I hear this even now today too, or I hear someone talking about mindset. I'm like, nah, whatever, like give me a strategy. But if we don't have the mindset first, the strategies aren't going to work. So no matter what you're doing in your life, if you don't have the thoughts that are going to create good feelings to help you do those actions, you're like pushing a big ball up the hill. It's going to be a lot more harder than if you are working with your brain and with your mindset to change those thoughts first.
I love it. Work with the brain, work with the mindset. You got to have the mindset first, or the strategy is going to be ineffective. It's just going to be a plan, or a thought, instead of something that you can actually execute and implement with intention. All right, so last one. Favorite food you once feared, but now enjoy with ease.
So this is hard because the first thing that came up to my mind was Nutella. But I used to be terrified of Nutella because we'd always have it in the house and I would never have it unless I was binging on it. And I wouldn't even take a spoon. Let's be honest. I was taking my finger and just like, okay, another finger out of the Nutella jar. But I don't even like Nutella anymore. Like we have a jar downstairs, but I honestly don't think I've had Nutella in like a year. One, because I have gone dairy free. It does have dairy in it. I'll give that disclaimer, but I just have no desire for it anymore. And so some of these foods that I used to be really scared of, I honestly learned. Same thing as ice cream. Like I bought a pint of Ben & Jerry's at the beginning of the summer and I went like a fourth of the way through it. And we're like, it's probably like going bad at this point because I just don't like it that much anymore compared to some of my other foods that I just truly enjoy. I enjoy whole foods most of the time. But the one food I do say I like is chocolate. Chocolate is one that I definitely used to binge on more, but I enjoy in amounts that feel good to me now. Usually a couple squares after a meal or something. But it is interesting to see that a lot of these foods that you might feel like you're obsessed over right now, sometimes it's just the restrictive rules that we have around them. But once we wake up and we realize like I can have this food anytime and that there's actually like whole foods taste best 99% of the time, you don't want those same foods as much anymore.
I love it. Thank you for that. All right. So last 2 questions. Give some suggestions, tips to the girl dads, the father figures, role models, spouses, partners of young women, girls that are experiencing painful periods, issues around fertility, and how they could be more a part of the conversation and the support system.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things is to be an example of yourself first. And I always give this to moms who are struggling with food. And they're like, how do I not pass this down to my daughter? How do I make sure that she has the eating habits that I didn't have and can eat healthy and not feel restricted around food? And I think it always starts with the parents and that the kids are always watching so much more than we ever know. And so when you take the lead and start changing your eating habits or educating yourself, then you can pass that down to other people. And it really does have a generational impact. You know, we think we're just changing ourselves, but everyone around us is impacted by it because we're social creatures. We're constantly picking up again. Our unconscious brain is processing 95% of the show. So it is picking up on when your friends start eating differently. Your brain picks up on that. And so you're now impacting your friends and your family and your kids just by you making a positive change in your life too.
I like that, Amber, because it made me think about one of my students whose father got a juicer. And because I always bring juice in the classroom, that's how I like to start my day off, with a good juice. She was drinking the juice and she was like, oh, Miss Ford, this apple juice is really helping. Like, I usually have to take pain pills on my periods. But I just took my dad's juicer from his house and I'm going to start juicing. And it's going to make, I feel better already. Like, I only had to use pills like the first 2 days, but the 3rd and 4th day, I didn't even have to because I had the juice. And so it makes so much sense. So if you are a father figure, male role model, partner or spouse of someone who is struggling with painful periods, infertility issues, then once you start changing your lifestyle, those lifestyle changes and habits are going to be supportive to what they could be experiencing, and they could adopt that. In turn would help them as well see reduced period issues, improve fertility issues, but at the end of the day, a better quality of life and love for themselves. And so I thank you for breaking that down. So last question, if you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would y'all eat?
Oh my gosh, this is a hard question. I'm so bad at history. Can I do a current person?
Yeah, they don't have to be like gone. It could be we made history today with this podcast, Amber. Like, don't do us like that.
You're right. So I would say the coach that I initially started learning from, her name is Brooke Castillo. She owned the Life Coach School. She was the first one where I started learning about how your thoughts aren't true when we can change our thoughts from this cognitive behavioral therapy perspective of how we have thoughts that create feelings and then drive our actions. So yeah, Brooke Castillo, I think she is a brilliant person. I got a lot of my coaching stuff from her. So I would love to sit down with her, but she's, ultra famous and doing her own thing. But I think she is amazing and she's taught me so much about life.
What y'all eating?
Oh, what are we eating? Okay, at our meal, Probably, I love sweet potato. And I'm also vegetarian, and I know you have a lot of plant-based people here. So I probably sweet potato and tofu. It's a little bit of an odd meal, but it's my favorite.
Okay, so Brooke Castillo, if you're down for some sweet potato and tofu, Amber would like to have a conversation with you. All right, Amber, so let everybody know where they can find you. How can they connect with you?
So you can find me at my website, theconfidenteater.org. I also have my own podcast, Become a Confident Eater, which you can hear Giovanni on, depending on when this episode comes out. She'll be on there at some point. And on my website, you can also find more about me, about how to work with me. I have a full 6-month Confident Eater program if you're looking for a more comprehensive solution to help you stop binge eating. I also have my Instagram, The Confident Eater, and a free Facebook support group called Become a Confident Eater.
Man, I absolutely love it. Thank you for being an amazing guest on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, Amber. Y'all, it's your healthy habits and anti-inflammatory lifestyle coach, Giovanni, and I am here to help you stop normalizing pain and start healing from the root so you can finally reclaim your energy, clarity, and peace on your journey back to loving yourself. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast.